Waitress said. "Sir, my mother has a ring like yours." The billionaire froze when he heard it. The evening crowd filled the luxury restaurant with laughter, clinking glasses and quiet conversations. Emily, a 23-year-old waitress, moved from table to table with practiced grace. She worked double shifts every day to pay her mother's medical bills, always wearing a warm smile that hid years of hardship. Near the window sat Richard Lawson, one of the country's most respected billionaires. Known for his success in real estate and technology, he rarely noticed the people serving him. Tonight, however, his attention was fixed on an old gold ring resting on his finger. He turned it absent-mindedly while waiting for his business partner. Emily approached his table. "Good evening, sir. May I take your order?" Richard nodded politely and ordered a simple dinner. As Emily placed the menu aside, her eyes caught the ring. Her expression changed instantly. She stared for a second before quietly saying, "Sir, my mother has a ring exactly like yours." Richard looked up sharply. "What did you say?" "My mother owns one just like it. Same engraving inside. She always told me it belonged to someone she never forgot." Richard's face lost its color. "What engraving?" Emily hesitated. "I've seen it since I was a little girl. It says, 'Forever E&R, Summer 1998. The billionaire stood so quickly that his chair scraped across the floor. "That's impossible." He slowly removed his ring and showed it to her. Inside were the exact words. Emily's hands trembled. Richard asked quietly, "What's your mother's name?" "Elizabeth Carter." He closed his eyes. 24 years earlier, Richard had been a struggling college student deeply in love with Elizabeth. They had planned to marry after graduation, but a terrible misunderstanding changed everything. Richard's wealthy father believed Elizabeth would ruin the family's reputation and secretly arranged for fake letters to convince each of them that the other had chosen a different life. Heartbroken, Richard accepted a job overseas. Elizabeth disappeared without another word. He had spent decades believing she had stopped loving him. Richard looked back at Emily. Is your mother nearby?" Emily nodded. "She can't walk very well, but she's waiting for me in our apartment." Without thinking twice, Richard canceled every meeting for the evening. An hour later, he stood outside a small apartment building that hadn't been renovated in decades. Emily opened the door. Elizabeth sat beside the window knitting a small blanket. When she looked up, the yarn slipped from her hands. "Richard?" He couldn't speak. Neither could she. Years of unanswered questions filled the room before either of them moved. Finally, Elizabeth whispered, "I thought you left me." Richard shook his head. "I thought you abandoned me." Emily stood silently as the two discovered the truth piece by piece. The forged letters, the lies, the powerful father who believed love could be controlled with money. Elizabeth quietly admitted she had learned. She was pregnant shortly after. Richard disappeared. Every attempt to contact him failed because his father intercepted the messages. She raised Emily alone, refusing to tell her daughter that her father had willingly left. "It hurt less believing fate separated us than believing you chose money over us," she said. Richard covered his face with trembling hands. "I never knew I had a daughter." He looked toward Emily, whose eyes were filled with tears. "So, you're my little girl?" Emily smiled through her tears. "I guess I am." For the first time in decades, Richard cried openly. Over the following weeks, he visited every day, not with expensive gifts, not with lawyers, not with cameras. He simply came as a father and as the man who had never stopped loving Elizabeth. Emily watched him fix broken cabinets, cook dinner despite burning half the food, and laugh with her mother about old college memories. Money had built skyscrapers, but kindness rebuilt a family. Richard later discovered documents proving his late father's deception. Although nothing could return the lost years, he chose forgiveness instead of revenge. He established a charitable foundation, helping single parents receive legal assistance and financial support, ensuring no family would ever again be separated by manipulation and power. Months later, Richard invited Elizabeth and Emily to a quiet garden ceremony. Holding the same gold ring that had survived nearly a quarter of a century, he smiled. "I should have asked this long ago." Elizabeth laughed softly through happy tears. "You've kept me waiting 24 years. She slipped the ring back onto his finger before placing her own beside it. Emily stood as their witness. realizing one simple sentence spoken in a restaurant had changed all their lives. Sometimes the smallest moments reveal the greatest truths: a familiar ring, a forgotten promise, and a love that neither time, distance, nor deception could ever erase.